Hello, I'm Dr. Scott Wadier.
And I'm Tommy Welling, and you're listening to the Fasting for Life podcast.
This podcast is about using fasting as a tool to regain your health, achieve ultimate wellness, and live the life you truly deserve.
Each episode is a short conversation on a single topic with immediate actionable steps. We cover everything from fat loss and health and wellness to the science of lifestyle design.
We started Fasting for Life because of how fasting has transformed our lives, and we hope to share the tools that we have learned along the way. Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Wadier, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited for today's conversation around when the scale fails you. And we're going to unpack all things in between. We talk about this inside of our challenges. We had this conversation recently inside of our coaching group, and it's something that we see as a mismatched result-based goal, action-based daily foundational habits. There's just a disconnect between that silly little piece of plastic, glass, and metal that has batteries in it that's on the floor and what it does to our psyche in the process of losing weight and getting healthy. Now, if you're new to the podcast, welcome in. We talk all things fasting. So yes, most people come to fasting for weight loss, but fasting is so much more powerful than that. Head back, listen to some of the episodes. If you want to hear more about our specific journey with fasting and how it's transformed our lives, how we ended up here 4 years later with coaching and resources and challenges and doing a weekly episode, it'll give you some insights into how fasting transformed our lives and why we think this is such a powerful tool to lose the weight, regain health, reverse diabetes, get off your medications, and literally take back control of your health and your weight loss journey once and for all. So if you're a long-term listener, buckle in, strap on the seatbelt, whatever you want to say here. We're going to be taking you for a ride through what the scale is, why it's a crappy metric, why it undermines our long-term progress, and ultimately we're going to give you some action steps on how to intercede that falling off or on mental gymnastics game with some actionable things that you can do that can insulate, never mind just your progress, but also the process between the ears. So Tommy, lots to unpack here today.
Right.
But I want to frame it out coming from the conversation that started inside of the coaching group where we have this weekly check-in, right? Mm-hmm. So the weekly check-in is set for everyone to take a few minutes and put their fasting schedule at the forefront of their week. All right, this is my week. This is how you plan. This is how you pivot. This is how I'm going to make it, put some intention into it, right, for the week. 10, 15 minutes max. And for the week, right? And this little check-in is just like planting the seed of, oh, what is my plan this week? What am I focusing on? It takes 3 to 5 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So this person said, a win, I'm down 1.2 pounds. And I followed the plan even during some life events.
Nice.
Right? That's what we call pivoting, right? So 10 minutes later, and we've talked through this person's crushing it, right? 10 minutes later, this comes through in a question submission because we do coaching calls every Thursday. And it says, I've been following this program for a month now. I'm down 10 pounds, yay, but the majority was during the challenge, which was about 3 weeks prior. So when we do one of our 7-day Master Your Fasting challenges, if you've been listening to the pod for any length of time, you know we do them multiple times a year. And it's really a great launch point to get into some of how we apply fasting as a lifestyle, not a diet. Mm-hmm. So she says, I'm frustrated a little because prior to starting, I was out of control. I would have large teas at Starbucks and multiple petite scones and multiple meals a day, high carb, fast food 2 to 3 times a week, chocolate daily, donuts daily, etc. But I was maintaining. So what I hear there is stuck.
Sure. Yeah.
Now I'm eating higher protein, lower carb. I've had one fast food meal, burger, not even a meal in the last 30 days. My plan my eating and I'm hitting at least 80% mark, yet only tracking down 1 pound a week. Help. So 10 pounds in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
tracking over this week at 1.2 pounds a week.
All right.
Where do you want to start unpacking the pesky little scale and how our big long-term result-based weight loss or health goal is undermined almost on the daily, on the reg, as they like to say, as the youngins like to say, right? I'm sure it's totally outdated. That's probably 10 years old, whatever.
I've heard somebody say that, yeah.
On the reg. So how it derails us, then we'll unpack some of the psychology behind it, but also some of the actionable stuff we can do to combat it.
Yeah, I don't even think I want to blame it on the scale. The scale doesn't tell me what my expectations should be, but some of those are baked in before I start, whatever my current leg is on my weight loss or my fat loss journey, whatever I'm trying to do. Usually there's some kind of starting point for it. Maybe it's a frustration factor. Maybe it's some upcoming event that I want to prepare for, or a season like summer's coming up, that kind of thing. And then usually it might not be a fully on-off kind of switch, but usually there's some sort of like mental push to kind of get started. And then when that's happening, there's going to be some baking in of expectations at that point. And a lot of times it's based on whatever the expectations were before. Maybe it's all those online calculators where you can say, okay, I want to lose 1 pound a week or 2 pounds a week. Or maybe it was all those times I put in the numbers in to lose it, or MyFitnessPal, and it shows me this nice linear graph.
This line.
Yeah.
And then where's the point where the line starts to diverge?
Yeah. And so all those things, we bring that kind of baggage with us into fasting or our next, calorie restriction episode, whatever you're using, whatever you want to call it, it comes with us, and it can be very, very problematic because that's where some of those expectations are set. But when expectation doesn't meet our reality, that's when we can sometimes improperly judge our progress or judge ourselves based on a lack of progress or what we're perceiving as a lack of progress.
So we talk about this with motivation, willpower, won't power, want power, episode 125, one of the most downloaded episodes we've ever done on discipline versus willpower. And someone who I love in the health and wellness space is Syatt Fitness, Jordan Syatt. And he had this post that said, monthly weight loss goals begin with good intentions and end in massive binges. So we could just say monthly fasting goals begin with good intentions and end in massive binges.
Sure, they
or
can.
frustration.
Yeah.
Instead of monthly weight loss goals or fasting goals, create a monthly consistency goal. Be ruthlessly consistent for 24 to 26 days. Now, interestingly enough, that 24-day mark out of a 30-day month is the 80% rule.
Yeah, I heard it. 80-20 rule right there, yeah.
Yeah. So be ruthlessly consistent for 24 to 26 days every month. You can control your consistency. You can't control your weight.
Great
so
point.
Recently, he had a nice rant about people, because this is something, he's got a big following. He must hear on social, right? We have a big podcast following. So blessed and grateful for all y'all that listen in. We're just not social media folks, right? We need to be.
True.
So
yeah.
I'm going to say we're working on it. No, but it's in the plans. Okay. But he went on this, he's very straight and to the point, no fluff. And I love that, right? Which is why I follow him. So he went on this rant about very well formulated, structured download of information, right? Where he was talking about the expectation, just like here, you can control your consistency, you can't control your weight. Tommy, I want you to break down the physiology of the numbers of what we expect versus what we see.
Okay.
In terms of total potential loss versus what we actually see and what's acceptable. So if you start a program and you see a little bit of momentum, this is why I referenced the episode 125 in the consistency, discipline, foundational habits versus motivation, habit stacking, whatever you want to call it. Subconscious rewiring, maybe we can go in 1,000 different directions. But the reality is like, what's the action you're taking on that day? We have a 50-pound weight loss goal. We're only a few pounds into that journey and the scale starts kicking us around a little bit mentally. It's going to be hard to stick to. But if you are losing an average of like 0.3, 0.4, up to 1.2 pounds a week, that is an incredibly healthy amount of weight loss for that time period. Especially if you're not doing any type of resistance training or muscle building activity. If you're just doing simple things like going from sedentary to walking, you're not going to be building muscle. There's not going to be this huge, muscle building process taking place where you're going to see that split the difference in terms of the scale change. So healthy weight loss, and what we like to call actually fat loss, little less than half a pound all the way up to just a little bit more than a pound a week, is incredible results. But what happens is you've ever done a longer fast or a multiple day fast, or even you've gone from 3 meals a day standard American diet to let me skip breakfast and compartmentalize. And man, I got really full really fast. So you only had 2 meals the next day. Or maybe you've done one of our challenges, right? And we do some fast cycling and we stack the fasts on top of one another. Mm-hmm. You're going to see that scale go pretty quick. We call it the whoosh. And you'll be like, whoa, I've made it. And then you go back to what it's looking like for sustainable change using less aggressive fasting schedules, more opportunity with food, working on your lifestyle and food decisions. And then the scale starts ticking up and down. Mm-hmm. Yet it's still trending down in the right direction with more than a pound a week for this individual. She's crushing it. She's adopting a lifestyle and seeing the scale change, but it's not enough. And that's where the problem lies.
Yeah, the problem lies when you're crushing it and you don't even know it. It's like, man, it's like just beyond my view, because I could be on cloud 9 right now. I could be so positively encouraged. I could
10 pounds in a month?
Yeah, right? I mean, that's amazing. Like, who would say no to that? Right?
Going from eating all the stuff that she said she ate to now like this healthy version of her? Holy crap, that's a win.
That's a win. It's a huge one, especially if she's eating in ways that feel like she's feeling good and they're sustainable long term. Like working in some food swaps, working in like, okay, I'm prioritizing my food choices and not just like a zombie to those fast food choices or to what didn't even feel like choices before. But just like these insatiable cravings, and I'm just being kind of led in that direction. So feeling a sense of control over the situation while the scale is going down, while she's likely feeling more energetic and better as well. And we haven't even talked about things like what else is going on under the hood. Does she have some visceral fat that might be being burned through as well, rather than
being stubbornly not being burned through?
True. Right? Yeah. Like you don't know what's going on there. You can start to get a feel for that when we go a layer deeper, and we'll talk a little bit about measurements and some other ways to look at progress besides just that, 2-dimensional, just flat thing that's sitting on the bathroom floor, right? Kind of misleading you. But if you set your expectations properly, like you were talking about 1.5, pounds potentially in a week. If you work through the math and just go, okay, burning a standard or an average 2,000 calories per day. If you were to eat absolutely nothing for a full week.
Okay, so you Angus Barbieri'd it, right? You're on the Angus Barbieri plan. You're just going to go 380 something days. You're going to lose 274 pounds, right?
Yeah. So he lost about like 5 point something pounds per week on average for a little over a year. Okay.
He was also morbidly obese.
Yeah. Which
like
makes sense.
Super morbidly obese.
Yeah. It makes sense. He was averaging something like 25 or 2,700 calories per day. But, at a certain point he started off when he
as a BMR, not as a caloric intake for him to get that big.
True. Yeah. And he was already at like 400 pounds, 456 pounds. Yeah.
Right.
So knowing that, and knowing that for the average 2,000 calories per day, your maximum in a week would be 4 pounds of fat. Okay. And that's eating nothing. And then, but even then the problem is, and then I can tell you from firsthand experience, if you do a longer fast, you might see a smaller change than that on the scale. Like you could see a -1 maybe, or a -2. We've heard from people who've actually done a 7-day fast and seen it net up from where they started, which feels really just like, what the heck did I just do for the last week, right?
Typically, you'll see a few pound weight loss, right, on the
Usually,
scale.
yeah.
But then there's always, when you start going back to more consistent eating again,
Yeah.
which is why we don't love this as a long-term weight loss strategy. It's great to do periodically once a year, Volta Longo, reset, all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
you're going to have this regain because your glycogen is going to come back on, right? So maximum that you could possibly lose on a 2,000 calorie BMR, TDE, what's required for you to be able to go through your day-to-day life in a balance, in homeostasis. The max you would see is 4 pounds.
Yeah, 4 pounds of fat. But it might be completely obscured by the scale. Because again, what if you saw like a -1 on the scale? But on the flip side of that, you might see a -7 or a -10 on the scale after 7 days. But again, your fat loss, depending on how many calories you're burning, but it's usually not that far off from that 2,000 calorie mark, depending on your size and your sex, is going to be 4 pounds. So then as soon as you break that fast, and then the next couple of times that you also have another meal, you might see, okay, I'll wake up the next morning, maybe it's ticked up, and maybe you're okay with that psychologically because you just ate. But what if it ticks up again the next morning? And what if it does again the next morning after that? Are you now regretting your 7-day fast, or are you mentally kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Like, could you be saying something like, maybe fasting's not working for me, or something else like that? Because look at all the work I did last week by not having any food, and then now the results are so quickly, being pulled away from me. Like that can be very frustrating and very bad for your mental tenacity and your mindset.
Stick with us here because we're going to give you some actionable stuff in just a minute, but we got to frame this out. So in either one of those situations, I've done both, right? Longer fast where the scale moves the first couple of days, glycogen depleted, feeling good, get through the transition into deep ketosis, GKI looks good, feeling good. And then the next couple of days, the scale stops moving. I'm no longer in an ideal weight loss. My body is no longer in the ideal nutritional weight loss category of ketones. It's focusing on other stuff. Right? Or I've done it and it's slow to start because of sleep or stress, or maybe your monthly cycle, or your transition from perimenopause into menopause, or maybe you got fired, or you lost a loved one, or your sleep's been crap, or you traveled, or something else gets in the way. You're like, all right, well, going into that fast, you're not in the same place. So you start your fast and you stick with it and you white knuckle it. And the beginning of the fast, it's not really moving. You don't really feel great. It's not the ideal time to push a longer fast. And then maybe you push through, and then you get to day 6, 7, 8, or maybe 4, 5, 6, or whatever it is. Maybe it's your first time going to 3 days. And then the scale finally rewards you. And I use that terminology on purpose. And so you're like, all right, I'm going to break my fast. And then you wake up the next day and boom, there's the regain.
Sure.
Right? So the tough part about this is that let me so we've done this inside of inside of our live events when we do our challenges. We'll put up a graph and say, would this be acceptable to you in this time frame if you were to lose this amount of weight in this amount of time? And it's always private, like people, we have graphs and tracking and all that kind of stuff, right? So we'll share it, and I just like to read the room. And it's so funny that every time we do that, it's always split. Yeah, I'd take it. Nah, that's way too slow.
Right.
Man, wouldn't that be great? Oh my gosh, I'd cry. So here's an example.
Okay.
10 weeks, my client dropped 3 pounds. 10 weeks, almost 3 months, 3 pounds. Who's in? Yeah. Yay or nay? As you're driving, don't run into a telephone pole. Pay attention to the road. How many of you would quit? I would have quit. I'd be so frustrated at that point.
Yeah.
Because fasting
everything.
Because fasting can be so powerful that it can get the scale to move quickly. Right?
Yeah,
especially if you're
sword.
Yeah, exactly. So, but in this case, 7 inches have also dropped.
Wow. That's a lot.
And this individual used to get discouraged when the weight would fluctuate. But by zooming out, looking at the big picture, which we're going to do now, unless there's anything else we missed, Tommy, in terms of unpacking this from a numbers perspective, a physiology perspective, a mindset perspective. We're going to move into zooming out and looking at the big picture and how to adopt a fasting, consistent, behavioral-based lifestyle.
Yeah, I think the only other point was when you go to break any fast, but the longer the fast is, the more this is likely to happen, is that if you see that scale start to tick up after that reward that you highlighted, that can be frustrating. Obviously, we covered that. But what if it went on? What if it was so frustrating that it actually discouraged you from having a real meal, from having a real nutritious meal? Because then you start to fear your plates a little bit and how they're going to come out on the scale. That's actually encouraging fear of food. And you can see that, especially if you get into longer fasts and the results don't meet your expectations. That can be very problematic, because the last thing we want is fear of food.
100%. We need that balance, that long-term confidence around food, confidence around the obesogenic, convenient, calorie-dense, processed, brain like we have this an affinity, right? For like, look at the Super Bowl commercials, right? Targeting the young teen group, because if you can get them then you've got them for life, right? Like we're in this, just not demonizing the entire food supply, right? Because we need it, but we're just in a place now where it's more convenient, more processed than ever. I'm not saying you can't have some of that stuff. You can, but it's become the norm. It's become the majority. So in that world, we need to have a different mindset of like, okay, this is what's around me. So how do we get those behavioral-based reps? Well, first of all, we're going to go through a few things here, but focus on non-scale victories. So energy levels, mood, sleep, a certain pair of jeans. Maybe if you are working out, you feel better during your workout, your endurance on your Peloton rides. My wife's got me addicted to these zone FTP, the FTP tests and zone training, power zones on Peloton, because it's actually good for my physiology, for my fat loss, but it's also like allows me to track my progress.
Nice.
What about compliments? What about how you think and look at yourself in the mirror and your appearance, or how about your attitude? So your rings fitting better, no longer needing naps, no more snack accidents. Like, what are these things that are non-scale victories that you can focus on that makes it easier, rather than this big 50-pound weight loss goal or 20-pound, whatever it is? You have these things that like are now that are more process based rather than that big result based.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier. Like focusing on, like, you can't control your weight in a month, but you can control your consistency in a month. So what are those little check boxes that you're going to need to hit if you want to hit a new health goal? I don't even care so much about a weight goal, but I just want to be healthier, right? And I feel like fasting is probably a really good vehicle to help take me there. So in order to get to where I eventually want to be, I need some check boxes that are also healthier. What do I know would be healthier? Well, what if I went out to eat one less time a week, cooked at home one more time, two more times in a week? What if I added some things that I know would be good for me, and I found a way to enjoy them a little bit more? Maybe a food swap, maybe a new recipe, get a little bit more creative with it. But also, what if I prioritize my sleep a little bit more? Because if I wake up tomorrow feeling better from the meal that I had today and from the sleep that I got tonight, you know how much easier tomorrow's fast is going to be? Like, forget about it. Like it might be 10 times easier. Yeah, right. It might be 100 times easier than trying to white knuckle it after, poor food choices yesterday and even worse sleep, right? Like it can be night and day different. And that's the difference between treating this as just another diet versus I'm going to adapt these tools for a lifestyle so that I can maintain health for life too.
What I heard in there too was that's more like behavior-based goals, right? Process-based goals. So, like more health-based goals, like eating more vegetables. You're talking about food swaps.
Instead of 10 pounds on the scale.
Yeah, starting your day with water, regular physical activity or walking, sleep, stress management. We know the research shows that like that stuff affects your cravings and your mood, and it's harder to be strong around foods that aren't serving your long-term goals, right? So we have a tool that we want to share with y'all, and you can grab it in the show notes. It's our fasting journal, and it has a bunch of different. It's not your standard grandma's kind of just blog about your thoughts and get them out on paper. No, it's very strategic, and it gives you a place to kind of figure out what these behavior-based goals are going to be for you and what these non-scale victories are. And it gives you a place to track things. And so, because this can really be this makes you more aware of your habits and emotions related to the things that we're talking about. Mm-hmm. So not the scale, but your health and your journey and the process, not the big result-based goals. So one of those things that you can track in there, Tommy, is measurements or your fitness progress or your mindful eating, right? Which are three of the things we wanted to mention.
Yeah, because even part of the attractiveness, if you will, of the scale is the simplicity of it. It's just one number that I can look at and check a box. Yes or no. Am I doing well or am I doing poorly? And then I can kind of judge myself by it, sometimes to my own detriment. Sometimes we can live and die by the emotional, baseline set in the morning when we jump on the scale. But if we're doing that, then we're missing the forest for the trees, if you will, because we're so zoomed into this one number. It's overly simplified. It doesn't tell us what's going on with the rest of our physiology, our body composition, our mindset, and our overall health. It's just one very simple number. So we have to think about this in a little bit of a broader way, and using the fasting journal to actually write down a couple of measurements, once a week, as far as body measurements go. That will be more helpful. Even if if you have a scale that does more, like it's giving you a body fat percentage, those aren't super accurate, but they're still a little bit better than just seeing the weight number, because
they're accurate in the delta. Yeah. They're accurate in the change.
Yeah.
They're accurate in whether or not you're going up or down.
Yeah, absolutely. So they should be used because they're going a level deeper than just that superficial reading that, again, even if you lost 4 pounds of fat, could be completely obscured by the volatility in the scale.
So I love this tracking fitness progress too, because I was doing these zone challenges in the Peloton. Like I love low and slow, love it. It's hard to be like, oh, I'm going to start a whole new fitness routine, right? Yeah. I get it. But what about if it's just, because we were doing some Peter Attia strength metrics, longevity metrics, right? At the beginning of the year, Tommy, like dead hangs and how long you can farmer carry, your body weight. And
heck yeah.
I even noticed when I used to get in the sauna, when I started doing, 180 to 200 degree sauna sessions multiple times a week, almost daily for a while. I'm down to about 4 or 5 times a week right now, cold plunging almost every day. Nice. But I noticed that like I would look at and be like, oh man, this doesn't get any easier to do. But I noticed that my ending heart rate on these sessions has drastically changed.
Yes.
So my cold plunge now, my heart rate's way lower at the end than it used to be.
Wow.
It drops. Awesome. The delta is much bigger. When I'm getting out of the sauna at 20, 25 minutes, I mean, my heart rate used to always be above 150. Like the brisket's done. You got to get me out, right? Like mission accomplished. But now I can look down and be like, oh, 125? All right, I'll stay in for a couple more minutes, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So
adaptation.
So maybe you used to walk for 30 minutes and man, you were wiped. Now you can walk for 30 minutes and you feel good. Right?
Yep.
So just those types of things, you can use the journal for that. And then, we've been talking big picture here, right? Is really emphasize the health over the appearance. Yeah. And you're not going to find that in there's a lot of misrepresentation of what that should be, is how I want to say it.
Yeah.
When it comes to social media, everybody putting out their highlight reel, stuff being edited and filtered in AI and all that. Like go back to the good old days when the only thing you could see was a newspaper and maybe a magazine every now and then, right?
Yeah,
like
in your close circle. The people you were connected with, not
over appearance.
Yeah. Not like pie in the sky, celebrity kind of appearance kind of stuff, which can, again, like kind of throw off our calibration for our own expectations. Right?
Man, I used to powerlift, right? I was big and beefy at one point, and not helping my insulin resistance. But I remember when Spartan, the movie 300 came out, the Spartan workout got super popular. I started doing that thing. I didn't look like any of those guys in the movies.
You didn't have the airbrush.
I did that for like 4 months. Yeah, I saw some great changes, but man, was my expectation off. Yeah, I'll do, and it was not easy, by the way.
Right.
I don't know if I could actually ever do it the way it was written out on paper. I think I had to make some alterations or some modifications. But anyway, so we're looking at tracking. The interesting part is there's like this next little group of 3 or 4 things that I want to put into kind of the mental side of it, right? So we want to look at mindful, intentional eating practices. We want to look at getting support or being in a group where you have the support regardless of the result. We want to be able to celebrate the progress in a way that's not food related, right? We want to reward and review and reward as we go through the process. And then ultimately the last one, Tommy, and we can unpack, these individually a little bit here. But the last one is really practicing this self-compassion. Now, I'm not saying, woe is me, don't get up off the couch and go move your butt and, stick to your windows and clean fasting and all that. Mm-hmm. But like, not every day is going to be a 10. Like, we need to have a little bit of like self-love, that it's not always going to be perfect. But as long as we're taking steps to move forward, it is okay. Challenge your story, get outside of your comfort zone, but it's okay. So those 4 I really want to group together in the mindful eating, the support, the celebration of the progress. I actually want to change that in real time. Celebrate the process.
Yeah.
And when you see a milestone, celebrate that progress. Yeah. Right. And then this last self-compassion piece.
Yeah, because if you're celebrating the process, you get to encourage yourself to take more of the action that's going to lead to more of those milestones. So you're going to get to celebrate more of those victories because you're encouraging the process along the way. Because without that process, you're never going to see those milestones, right? But it's like we get excited about the big, hairy, like results-based goal, and we forget to think about the process and what that's going to take. So by doing that and taking those small steps towards more intentional, mindful eating, like we're really like carving a path that's going to lead to those processes too. And then those lead to the health-based outcomes as well that you might not be able to really measure in real time. You might have to make a plan for, let me do certain blood work 3 months from now or 6 months from now, or maybe let me go get a DEXA scan or like something else that's going to give me some more data that I'm not just seeing from the scale. But the only way to see changes in my visceral fat are going to be to make process-based changes consistently, from
which
now.
You will not see daily.
Yeah, no, you won't. And you have to expect that. Whereas the scale, you can kind of like, pull on the slot machine there and see what the outcome is every single day. That's part of
I always think of like Noemi,
yeah,
stop.
Yeah.
Whatever that game was back in the day, right?
I remember that one. Yeah.
Yeah, Noemi, stop. Right, and the little devil's like floating around. I don't know, man, what's the name of that? Oh my goodness. Maybe it was Noemi. But
Noemi.
Because
press your luck.
Press your luck.
Yeah.
There you go. Press your luck. Man, stuff is ingrained. So when you look at that, the Noemi with the scale, I mean, we know that. So when we started this conversation, it's not like, oh, if the scale fails, it's no, when it does, because it's going to fail you because we have these big expectations for our big result-based goals, especially at the beginning when you're highly energized about it. And that's why that exercise during every live challenge that we do, I always like to put up a graph and ask the question, is this acceptable to you? Mm-hmm. And it's always split, just like the example here. 3 pounds in 10 weeks, that's great progress. 7 inches lost, but for the majority of us, that is way too slow.
Right.
And with fasting, yes, we can do better. Yes, you can go faster. Yes, you can add in an extra flame day. Yes, you can do a longer fast. Right? There's all those levers, but having the correct framework underneath, which is why one of the first things we ever created was that Fasting for Life journal, Tommy.
Yeah.
So powerful to get it out, get it in front of you, and start foundationally putting in some of these behavioral habits, and then start focusing on the process, not the progress, and finding ways to enjoy it more, be excited about it. Because I don't know about you, but if you tell me that I need to eat less and move more for the rest of my life to get a result, I'm going to be like, that sounds, and I got to track and weigh my food and do blah, 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 blah. No, thank you.
All right. No, thank you.
I'm out.
Yeah.
So, Tommy, final takeaway for you as we wrap up today's conversation.
Yeah, final takeaway would be, that journal. I'm not a big journaler, but just taking like 3 or 5 minutes every single day.
Yeah.
Download it, put a couple of thoughts on there, track a few new things, like take a weekly measurement, and so you can start actually uncovering some of the success behind the process that you're actually implementing. And that's going to be incredibly encouraging. So I'm going to encourage you to do that. And then, one of the things that you mentioned was also seeking support. So just remembering, like, once you start to get outside your comfort zone, accountability, encouragement, and some guidance can also be key too. And so if you find yourself going, yeah, you know what, I wish I just had a little bit more of that, then like join us for a challenge. And then, we'll talk about how to build out some long-term frameworks for success too. So I love continuing this conversation, and we do week in and week out too.
So interesting that a lot of the times with the challenge, it's like, oh, what's the schedule? Okay, great. And then we only talk about the schedule like 1/10 of the time. It's all of this other stuff that we mentioned today. So when the scale, hell, we have an entire day dedicated to just when the scale fails.
Right. Yeah.
So rat-a-tat-tat, we're going to focus on the non-scale victories. We're going to set behavior, action-based goals, process-based goals. We're going to start to put it down, journal it, get it out. We can look at measurements, tracking fitness progress, intentionality when it comes to eating and seeking support, celebrating your progress along the way, making it fun.
Yeah.
Practicing a little bit of that self-compassion where, okay, it's not going to be perfect. This is not a ding on who I am and my identity.
Yeah.
You can't control it. Tommy put the numbers out there, maximum 4 pounds a week, but yet 0.75 to 1 pound a week is not enough. Why? Right? Well, it's because we need to shift from emphasizing health over the scale in our appearance. And that ultimately is what's going to lead to long-term sustainability. So that's a lot of stuff. Take 1 or 2 things that resonated with you today, put them into action today. Like we say in our open, action, action, action trumps everything every single time. It's not knowledge, but it's the application of knowledge that wins. So happy fasting, set those fasting timers, grab the journal, join us on the next challenge. Tommy, appreciate the conversation, sir, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.